What's different about AFT Pharmaceuticals as a company, I mean?
Yeah, look, I think it's we're looking for angles and looking for niches, things we can improve, things we can make better. So it's that sort of constant search, for improvements and things like that. Like if we look at our Cristoderm, I mean that's an old product. It's hydrogen peroxide, but when you stabilise it in a special base, so it has a shelf life of 3 years. And you can deliver it topically. I mean, that's taking something old but improving it and doing it differently. Same with Maxigesic, a couple of older analgesics, but we combine them, we use the right ratio, and then that improves something that was already existing, and it's done better.
And that looking to do things better, is that, do you think, a combination of your size, agility, but just sort of the culture that exists within the place?
Yeah, I think it's probably a cultural thing too, that we work and we have small kind of expert teams that we work in, so we can do things quite quickly. So sometimes I think when you're too large, it's probably hard to do things quickly. So we work pretty hard on having a small team, but a team that are experts, and then they can work on things quickly, and we can make a decision, and then we can move on and get it done.
Your product, Cristoderm, doesn't contribute to antibacterial resistance. That's quite valuable in the current climate, isn't it?
Yeah, look, that's something that we certainly recognised kind of a long time ago. It definitely is. There's a growing concern, and there always has been, but it's getting worse, about the threat of antibiotic resistance. One of the problems is if you use a topical antibacterial on your skin, that can actually cause antibiotic resistance. And it's something going forward is certainly a big concern. So therefore a product like Cristoderm basically doesn't have any antibacterial resistance and avoids that problem.
So if as an example, you have Cristoderm, no antibacterial resistance, the MaxiClear range, no pseudoephedrine, and it was ahead of the curve, no codeine and Maxigesic. When you take all those things together, I get a sense that AFT isn't frightened to swim against the tide a little bit, if you know what I mean. Is that fair?
Yeah, I guess in fact what we're almost trying to do is to spot the tide changing and early, which is what we've done, and then we swim with it. It's much easier for a small guy to swim with the tide. Yeah, so in many ways we're actually swimming with the tide, we're just spotting it change early, and that's pretty important.
Yeah, it's a good analogy. The tyranny of distance. I mean, technology has changed that for New Zealand and Australia a lot. Could you have done what you do 20 years ago being based here?
Yeah, I suspect it may have been possible, but would be a lot more difficult. Nowadays with computers and Skype and things like that, look, it's just so much easier that I really don't think that kind of tyranny of distance really exists today. Maybe the hardest part is travelling, I guess, in aeroplanes and stuff, because you still got to meet people is pretty important, but generally it's got a lot easier.
We've been talking about the drug development pipeline. One of the products in there is a device, and it's, from what I've seen, it's quite revolutionary. Can you tell us a bit about that?
What it does is it delivers drugs intranasally. Now that's something that's actually reasonably well known as possible, but the biggest problem is there aren't really any delivery devices that do it well. A lot of the devices are quite large. They're maybe the size of a bread box, and they plug in the mains. So practically they're not very practical for patients to actually use. We've managed to license a technology, and we've further developed it, which really makes it genuinely handheld, and it really works well. So that's certainly been the key challenge, to actually get something that works properly. It's much like the case of you had an old phone which is big and clunky, then you suddenly got a proper handheld portable phone. It's literally that sort of advanced, really. Yeah.
And this is your product that will be out licensed, and the potential uses for it across different medicines are quite significant.
Yeah. Look, there's things like, for example, sinusitis is a very common problem. The problem, though, is that a lot of existing treatments like nasal sprays have very poor penetration into sinuses. our device has a lot better penetration, like miles better, not just slightly better, something like 20, 30 times better. So there's that. And also then for drug delivery, if patients, say, are treated in hospitals and then they go out of hospital and then they still have problems that would normally need them to come back into hospital, we can avoid that by giving them our device and they can use those same drugs. Otherwise, they could only use those in a hospital setting.
Again, maybe a good example of New Zealand doing niche really, really well, and the potential for that product globally quite significant.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing research at the moment just to see what sort of uses that it could have, but it really has a huge number of uses. And it's surprising, actually, how many kind of times you could use it in a big market like, say, America or like Europe. There's huge potential